Hello, my name is Kim Martman, and this is Chapter 1 of the Introduction to Excel class. I am reading directly from our usual Excel textbook, so it is really helpful if you have the textbook. If you don't, that's okay, but always feel free to ask me if you feel that you need a copy of the book. And Chapter 1 goes pretty quickly. It's just a quick overview of the Excel window and what goes where, and just how to navigate a really simple spreadsheet. As the class goes along, we will be making more elaborate spreadsheets, so some of this that I'm going over now will make more sense as we go along in the class as well. I'm going to start on page 8 and just kind of go over the Excel window for this chapter. So to start with, again on page 8, Excel documents are called workbooks. And it's a collection of spreadsheets. That's what we usually call them. They can also be called worksheets, but typically we call them spreadsheets still. And this is a blank spreadsheet here. There's nothing on it. You can see that it has the alphabet across the top. That's the column header. And the row headers are the numbers down the left side. And I'm going to start at the top of the page now. So in the upper left, if you can follow my cursor and see that okay, is the Quick Access Toolbar. And with the Quick Access Toolbar, you can customize it to include some of your most used functions. Mine usually includes Save, which is this little floppy disk right here. And there's Undo. I can't undo anything right now because I don't have anything written there. And then there's Redo, which again I can't use because I don't have anything written in my spreadsheet as of yet. But if you want to edit the Quick Access Toolbar, you can hit this down arrow and you can check and uncheck any of these options that you have. But I personally find it's best to have, if you want to autosave, that's great, but have Save, Undo, and Redo at the bare minimum, because those are commands that I personally use a lot, so I always have that. And then on the top here, we have Book 1, and that's just the name of the workbook because I haven't saved it yet. And then once I save it, usually the autosave will turn on, but you can turn that off if you don't prefer to have it auto-saving. And then across the top here, we have just the different tabs like File, Home, Insert, Draw, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, View, and Help. So you can tell which tab you're in because it is underlined in green. So if I were to click on Insert, the underlining goes to green. And this also just depends on the version of Excel that you have on your computer as well. Some of them might actually turn it green, but this is a newer version. This is, I believe it's Excel 2016. And then here we have, under Home has the most commonly used functions here. Like here's Paste, and Cut and Copy, and just the Format Painter. That way you can transfer formats. We're getting into that later. But you can see how all these down here, which we call the ribbon, that kind of divides it according to what the functions are. So we have clipboard, font, alignment, numbers, style, cells, editing, and ideas and sensitivity. So this just kind of gives you an idea of what all it organizes it basically. So it's a little bit easier to find. And then next to some of these sections, you can kind of see how it's sectioned off here. You can see these small arrows, and they are hard to see a little bit. But if you click on them, it brings up some more options. Like this is how I remember the font functions looking back in the 90s when I first started using Office. This is kind of how it looks. So like with number, you have all the different number layouts that you bring up when you click on this arrow. And alignment settings. So there's all sorts of different settings that we are going to get into later. But what I also find helpful is if there's something you're not quite sure of, you can always hover your mouse over it, and it'll tell you what the function does. So there's the font color, which is the A with the red under it. And then there's Paste. And then you can also see next to where it says Paste, it says Control V. That's the keyboard shortcut for it. So if you don't feel like in dragging your mouse or anything like that, you can always just use the keyboard shortcut. And then again, across the top, we have the column headers and then the row headers down the side. And then where it converges is the name of the individual cell. So if we say write in cell A1, here is cell A1, there's cell B1, and there's C3. And you can kind of see right here, it tells you which cell that you're in as well. And this set of cells, which are these rectangles here, we call those cells, that is the worksheet. And then down on the bottom, right above the clock, is another handy function, is the zoom. So if you're having a little bit of trouble seeing, you can zoom in, which is very handy if you're highlighting to make a chart, which we will be doing later on in the class. Now I'm going to turn over. I actually covered much of what was on page 9. So on the bottom of page 9, there's the formula bar and the name box. So again, the name box is what says C3 right now. That tells you which cell that you are in. And we also have insert formula right here, this FX. We're going to get into this a lot later. This is where some of the pre-made functions basically for the formulas are. So that way you don't have to start from the bottom basically. Let's see. And then we also have the formula bar. So again, we're going to get into this a lot later. And this is where if you want to handwrite a formula, it would go in here. Now again, this book was written for Excel 2016. This isn't quite the 2016 version, it's a little bit newer than that. But most of the functions do agree with each other if you have a more recent function or version. So on the bottom of page 10, to save the workbook, there are a few different ways of doing that. Since I haven't saved it yet, I can just click on the floppy disk up here and do it. But I can also go to File and then Save As, or Save, either one, because I haven't given it a location yet. But Save As is where you would put the location. So right here you can see I have a few locations. I have OneDrive, which is a senior source specific, and here's SharePoint. But if I want to save it to my PC, and this is something, if you go too fast, you can easily lose the file. So you have to be kind of careful. So you can go to this PC, and then you can kind of see here some of the different locations. It kind of gives you more options as to where you can save it. I'm going to put it on my desktop. You can see where I saved it on the desktop right here. And then under file name, I would change it. I'll say recorded intro to Excel, because I am recording this class. But make sure to save it as something that you remember what it is. And usually if you go a little too fast and get a little bit ahead of yourself and you're not sure where it went, the first place I typically look is the documents folder, because that's where they typically send it. Okay, and the book does kind of repeat some of this content again. And so on page 15, I'm going to go over how to, I know we're skipping a little, I just kind of want to save time on the video, but of course you can always review the information in the book afterward. So on page 15, there's a table about moving around using the keyboard. And there are different ways to move from cell to cell using the keyboard, and that might be easier if you're typing and you don't want to break your rhythm and reach up and grab the mouse. It is especially useful in the large worksheet, which I don't have going right now. But I am going to go ahead and click in the middle and kind of read along and demonstrate what some of these do. So Enter usually moves one cell down, and this will make more sense in a minute as I actually start typing something. And Tab, I'm going to press Tab on my keyboard, moves to the right. Now when you hold down Shift, Shift causes it to do the opposite of what it would typically do. So I would hold down Shift and then Tab, and it goes back to the left. Shift and Enter causes it to go back up. You can also navigate with the up, down, right, and left arrows on your keyboard. That just navigates the highlighted cell wherever you want it to be. But if you hold down Control while doing that, it goes to the left, right, or top or bottom end of the column or row that contains data. Now I'm not using that now because I don't have any data, so it's not going to work quite right. Home moves to the first cell in a row. So that takes me to the beginning of row 6. Control Home moves to the first cell in a worksheet. So that takes me to A1. If I were to have data there, it might work differently. Control End moves to the lower right cell of a worksheet. So if you have a long worksheet, you save it and then you close it and then you come back later, you can do Control End and it goes to the end of that worksheet. So you can start where you left off. That also works in Word, and that's one of my favorite functions. Page Up moves up one screen, and that's above your 4 arrows. Page Down moves down one screen, and since I only have one screen, I can't quite use that now because it doesn't look quite right. And then Alt and Page Up moves left one screen, and Alt and Page Down moves right one screen. And then Control and Page Up moves to the previous worksheet, but we only have one worksheet at this time. So I'm going to do some quick practice exercises to kind of show you how I navigate around a very, very simple spreadsheet, and then we will be ready for chapter 2. So I'm going to rename this tab. On the bottom, you can see here there's a tab that says Sheet 1. There are 2 different ways to give it a new name so you know what it is. I prefer to double click and it highlights the whole thing, or triple click. And just write practice exercises, and you can see how it highlighted it. You hit enter to let it know you're done, or you can right click with your mouse on it and it'll let you rename it there. Now you see on the bottom I have a tab called practice exercises, and when we start opening more tabs this will make more sense. So quite quickly I'm going to do this quick chore list. I've clicked on A1 to make it active. Now I'm going to type in person. Now to go to B1, I can use my arrows on the keyboard, or I can use tab, whichever one you prefer. And then I type in job, and then again tab or arrow in minutes. And now that I've reached the end of that, I hit enter and it takes me right back to A. So there's rank, tab, sleep, tab, enter, rank, tab, not tab, 20, and enter. So you kind of get a rhythm going eventually. Rank, tab, X door, and enter. And see how it takes me to the beginning again. Sue, tab. And so now I've reached the end of that. And you can kind of see, and this has always been interesting, is when there is a word in a cell, it aligns to the left. So the first letter of the word always touches the left side of the cell. So you can kind of see here under this job column, it does the same thing. Now numbers align to the right, so they touch the right side of the cell. You can change this. This is just how it looks by default.